Joining us live in studio, Professor Sipho Siepe, political analyst, and Jackie Shando, political commentator. Good evening to you, gentlemen. Should I say former EFF member and part of the core team that founded the party? Maybe we should start there. What was it like 4 years ago?
Oh, yes, man. You know, I still plunge into some kind of nostalgia, you know, looking back 4 years ago in Soweto and agreeing that indeed political developments in the country call for a new call, political call and struggle to continue with the struggle against apartheid, against colonialism, because ultimately the struggle was for total emancipation. Unfortunately, 4 years later, those beautiful principles, you know, among which land expropriation without compensation, nationalization of mines and other strategic sectors of the economy. Suddenly, there's a new tune. No longer nationalization. Today, the EFF speaks about creation of a state bank, creation of a state mining company, in addition to these privately owned mining institutions, privately owned banking institutions, which is not nationalization. When we formed the EFF, we spoke of land expropriation without compensation. And subsequently, we find that even the resolutions at the first policy conference of the EFF, which said all land, all property, in particular white property in South Africa, is stolen property, had shifted. Now the land position says, the land policy rather says, unused land, only unused land will be expropriated, which means we will no longer expropriate stolen land by the white minority in this country. So it's interesting developments 4 years later.
Yeah, but you're not a disgruntled member who left because you couldn't get your way or you're avoiding reprimand or whatever it is that sometimes former members are accused of.
No, not at all, actually. I mean, we have been through the education system, even went abroad to study. There is a future for some of us in this country. In fact, some of us have a history in corporate South Africa, but we left because of its anti-black, racist structure of capitalism in South Africa. It doesn't matter whether you're a lawyer, a banker, you do get niggerized, you do get lynched, as we call it in this country. And we felt that needs a political solution. And that political solution will come from a movement like the EFF when we formed it. So we are still committed to the liberation of our people, and we feel that will be achieved through a political struggle.
Yeah, we just gave the meteoric rise of the EFF, particularly after Julius Malema and his team being fired from the ANC. It was essentially started on the premise of disappointment, hurt, disbandment to an extent, but they've come to make a voice or stance for themselves. Professor Sip.
Well, one must say first, as articulated here, that the EFF represents, even today, a very important body of political opinion. That political opinion used to be within the ANC, and it found itself booted out for a number of reasons. But what we cannot shy away from or be dishonest about is that despite all those inconsistencies, the EFF has actually done better than any other offshoot that had left the ANC. You need to look at the COPE, which was led by somebody who was a chairperson of the ANC. I mean, that's a very powerful position. You have Bantu Olomesa, you have other groupings, but it has held its own. And of course, it is very bold in making claims. I mean, here's a party that could not even get a municipality in the last elections. But it begins to talk about taking over 2019. But that's a nature, also that is also the selling point. And we should not take it away from them. And all those inconsistencies that you talk about, they are also part of their political expediency because they do work. The EFF, despite its small number on the ground and also in parliament, it has captured the political imagination. But part of it is because it is also helped by the anti-ANC forces. So there are times when you think that the EFF is actually doing well, it is getting this attention, when in effect it is simply people are piggybacking on its rhetoric. But it's one thing that they are consistent on, which you saw it also today when you opened your news bulletin about Pravin at UJ. Pravin is somebody who has become almost messianic when he goes to white-only spaces.
Sure.
But what the EFF did at UJ was to say, Chief, you're not the Messiah.
Yeah, hold
you're,
that thought. That
simply
debate is
an
coming up at
anti-ANC.
7:30, so don't spoil it.
I'm not going to spoil it. But the point is that there's an issue of consistency, that he was a problem then. Even when he becomes anti-Zuma, they still bundle him along that. Then there's issue of they may have retreated on their position on posture on land, but they still continue to raise it. And actually, we should credit them, even when they were still in the ANC, to make some of these issues possible to talk about. And they gave the ANC, says, well, you're talking about land. Let's show that you are actually committed, because your president had said we need to start moving fast on land. And for me, it was a principal position for them to say, let's vote on this and make sure that we remove all the obstacles, even though they may not be complete, but anything that can be used against us, let us deal with it. So one would say, yes, inconsistent somewhere, but give them credit for, because they've not stopped other parties from capturing the political imagination, but they have understood, because they were made out of activists. I mean, when you talk about him, you're talking about people who were activists on the ground. So the EFF is not Jimmy joining come lately. Sure. It is a grouping that came because it was already on the ground. So it was easy for it to form a formidable force.
Yeah.
From
we've been consistent on inviting the EFF, and I think it's in a sense balancing out with the former members of the EFF, or those that were there in its infancy or even when it started. And Kim Heller is one of those, political commentator and a TNA contributor. Good evening to you, Kim, and thanks so much for joining us. 4 years on, and the EFF are now being even more audacious, saying that they will take the national elections in 2019. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Cindy.
Yeah, I was saying, how realistic is this audacious dream of 2019 national elections for the EFF?
Well, Cindy, thank you for the invitation to be on your panel tonight. When I joined the EFF in 2014, the party was not even a year old. But even at that stage, it was showing great promise on the back of an ideologically very sound founding manifesto, which was steeped in economic liberation and land return. But ironically, I think as the party has matured, the EFF itself has actually is diminishing its own potency as a firebrand and a revolutionary force. So this talk of swelling the party support from 6% to 50% is just part of the trickery that has become the signature tune of the party. Malema is very astute, and he knows that is not going to happen. I think at best the party is going to climax at about 15%. And I think this is because of the relationship that it formed with the DA, which I think has actually diminished and downgraded its support, because the illegitimate gifting of its votes to DA in the municipal election actually was a betrayal of black interests and a forsaking of its original economic liberation agenda that many, including myself, once subscribed to. And even if members in the EFF are too anxious to speak out against this partnership, there is a great sense of discomfort with partnering with this white political party. If I may just conclude by saying there's this overwrought emotional obsession on the dethroning of President Zuma is costing the EFF support. In fact, it's turned the EFF's dedication to economic liberation very flaccid. I mean, to be graphic, I'm writing a column, which I hope everyone reads in the New Age on Friday, where I say that economic liberation for the EFF has actually become the neglected side chick of the EFF rather than its steady companion. And I think this is a tragedy for the black agenda in South Africa. And on the occasion of EFF's 4th birthday, I would like to urge Julius Malema to reconsider the path that he's taking.
All right, Kim, just stay on the line. Butsang Mwela, political analyst, joins us as well. Ideological bankruptcy by being in bed with a DA, in your view, how is this going to affect the EFF?
Well, good evening indeed to the viewers and fellow panelists. Let me apologize to the viewers of MN7 for being late. It was beyond me. But let me say, it is not ideological bankruptcy, because the EFF, its founding manifesto, there was an ideology. There are 7 cardinal pillars of the EFF. What has happened is the leadership, and I don't want to even say the membership of the EFF, the leadership of the EFF, particularly at the CCT level, departing from those founding manifesto to can end up even, worst case scenario, being in bed with the DA. And how do you, South African politics, I define them as like a petrol tank. You don't put gasoline and diesel into that petrol tank and you think the vehicle will keep on moving. The EFF, we must give credit, the first 2 years, the first few months of its founding, everything was moving very fast and the numbers were rising. The founding manifesto and principles, cardinal pillars, they talked and they appealed to the majority of black people in South Africa, even if they didn't vote for it. But the problem started when the focus shifted from being an alternative political party in the country to a party that is putting all its energies in removing Jacob Zuma from power. It is not even about removing the ANC out of power anymore. It is collaborating with anybody else, whether you agree with them politically or not, to remove Jacob Zuma out of power. And these are some of the things I've said before to say it looks like the EFF, the same as COPE is falling into that trap, the same as UDM, they will grow up to a certain point, and come the second round of elections, you will see diminishing. I'm one of the people who think they won't go beyond the 6% they've achieved because of their own goals they've been scoring. Focusing on Zuma, dropping key aspects of their cardinal pillars. When last did we hear the EFF being in the press conference talking about their 7 cardinal pillars, their programs and their manifesto? Everything is about Zuma. Everything is about removing Zuma out of power. And even their members, somebody had said it earlier, even their members outside, on the ground, are questioning this relationship with the DA, especially those people who joined the EFF based on its philosophy and founding principles to say, but the DA is an old white racist organization that is taking care of the interest of the capitalist. We belong to a socialist organization, and therefore what is going on with our leadership, and that is an own goal that is going to cost them a lot. But I've heard the leadership of the EFF saying, we don't care, by all means necessary, whatever we lose or win, those who want to go, they can go. We want to see just Zuma out of power, and that's where the challenge is.
Yeah, do you think maybe their rises, as we mentioned, had been premature in how quickly they ascended to at least municipal power, albeit with the assistance of clubbing with the DA as it were?
Not at all. Had the EFF stuck to its founding principles, founding manifesto and policies, I tell you now, it would have, by now, it would have even attracted even the bulk of the black middle class in particular, because its founding principles are that comprehensive in terms of transformation, decolonization, emancipation of the African majority. There's no doubt about it. But at some point, there has been a deliberate, conscious redirection of the party in terms of its focus, in terms of its own objectives. Seemingly, money has come through, and this is historical, by the way, throughout Africa. Potentially vibrant, authentic revolutionary formations, and whenever that happens, when we organize ourselves and we look very dangerous, white interests intervene, and there's always money involved, and then rhetoric changes, focus changes. I could list a lot of countries. So what we're seeing today, it's hurtful, because the EFF does still presents that potential, those possibilities. In fact, what happened today at UJ attests to that. And I know those comrades, that they belong to the Pan-Africanist black consciousness bloc within the EFF. They are against the marriage between the EFF and the DA. They are against this obsession with Zuma, these press conferences called by Julius, and it's just gossip. There's nothing substantive. They are against abandoning programs that attack white capital, APSA, which should have been implemented. It's nowhere to be found. And I don't even recall the last time the leadership of the EFF spoke about confronting white capital. Everything is obsessed to Zuma.
Yeah, so by association they're actually depleting, as Kim was saying, watering down the revolutionary or radical pitch, as it were.
Yeah, well, I think it would be good if some of them were watching this program, because some of us do believe that parties, and especially in a multi-party democracy, we do need a body of opinion that is militant, that is radical, that is able to shift and also push the ANC from what appears to be a complacency around a number of issues. I mean, today we're talking about radical economic transformation, which was started largely by the ANC Youth League and also the EFF grouping. We're talking about land, which also got impetus from the young people. What we saw also happening at universities, the dynamism that ultimately came. I mean, I talk about people like myself and Botsang. We've been raising these issues at universities around change, but it took the dynamism of young people from the EFF, from the Youth League, SASCO, to push the agenda that is actually different, and an agenda that is not accommodative. And even to read some of the funding documents of the EFF, there are cardinal issues that they raise about also that the ANC may have succeeded in bringing political liberation, but they were raising the issue whether it is capable of taking it to the next level, the notion of reinvention. It is possible that the ANC may be able to do that, but it is also good when you have an injection that suggests that there is a different way. But the point that is being raised here is that it seems to be suffering from the same divorce issues that COPE suffered from, that UDM suffered from, and other groupings. Because what we need is more of a political and economic program, not so much an obsession about how much you can show that you dislike a certain individual.
Yeah.
Another element, colleagues, is the loss of the Africanist members within the EFF is going to cripple the EFF a lot. A lot of, when I say Africanist, I'm talking about people from the black consciousness and the Pan-Africanist sectors, whether ideologically or the parties, because those two parties, as up in the PAC, have failed over the years to rise to a level where they could challenge or pose a challenge to the ANC within the democratic election dispensation. And now what we have noticed outside is that almost every Africanist who was in the EFF at the founding and helping to build this organization and making attractive not only to the breakaway Charterist youth, have moved and being outside line and are outside the organization because it is no longer appealing, to what was attracting them into the organization. And I wonder if between today and 2019, the EFF, which in 9 months they managed to contest the election, and in my ways they've done very well, but will they be able to resuscitate the organization? However, Jackie has raised something very crucial to say. All revolutions, and it's not only in Africa. You look at Latin America as well. Once there is a progressive revolutionary force that's coming up, you can look at Lula politics in Brazil, you can look at President Chavez. There's two things that happen. It's not only money that comes in. If those who resist money, like Thomas Sankara did in Burkina Faso, they get killed. If you look at other African leaders who resisted to take money from the imperialists and former colonizers, they get destroyed or killed. And we are seeing money playing a role in South Africa. We are seeing a supposed to be a radical socialist party talking capitalist language, even going into bed with an absolutely super capitalist organization like DA for whatever reason. Reasons may be valid, but couldn't they fight the battle the way they fought the battle on 2014 all by themselves based on their policies to can achieve what they intended to achieve at the end? And this is a challenge that a lot of political formations in the continent, especially in South Africa, will remain weak, and they will not remove ANC out of power because of changing tune over years.
Kim, just very quickly, how would you define this 4-year-old organization, and if you juxtapose what the ideals of where it started from?
I think it is a party that has lost its promise, and I think it's time for deep reflection. It needs to decide if it's on the path of black liberation or if it is propping up white monopoly capital. The EFF spoke this year of 2017 being the year of the branch, but it appears as if the only branch that's being extended is an olive branch to white monopoly capital. It is currently on the wrong side of history, and I'm really hoping that it remedies its stance on this.
All right, Kim Heller is a TNA contributor and writer and political commentator. And when is your article? You said there's one this Friday, so it's every Friday.
Yes, I've actually focused on the EFF on Friday, so do enjoy and read and share my views.
And engage. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Just very briefly, sorry, Jackie, I cut you off on your thought.
I just wanted to illustrate the level of degeneration, even in terms of articulation and rhetoric. A few years ago, EFF would say, whites are thieves, they are land thieves, they are settlers, they have no claim, none whatsoever, on land, on the economy. Today, the leaders of the EFF, speak in these institutions, such as the Rand Merchant Bank, Chamber of Mines, and so on and so forth, and explicitly say that we just want you to share with us, give us a little bit, which is a fundamental deviation from reclaiming what was wrongfully taken away from Africans and the accumulation of white wealth through exploitation of Africans. So it's no longer about reclaiming, it's no longer about delivering justice. That tells you that indeed these two forces that were formerly opposed to each other have found each other, and now they're speaking from more or less the same position. Give us a little bit.
Yeah, so sorry, Jackie, we had Lufuno Kokoro, former economic freedom fighter member. I do apologize for coming to you so late. Just your view on the EFF, its success, its challenges going forward into 2019.
Thank you very much. Good evening to your viewers and ANN7. Look, when we formed the EFF, we said it is going to be a Leninist, a Marxist, and Fanon, and also we are going to be inspired by Thomas Sankara. And when you look at how the EFF has moved so far, they have deviated even from the non-negotiable cardinal pillars. Because we said the issue of the land is going to be our primary focus. We need to fight for the land should be returned. And that white people will remain our enemy because they've stolen our land. And when you look at the EFF now, the only thing that they speak about is President Zuma. They don't speak about what they've promised people in their manifesto when they were speaking about the security guards, the retail workers, farm workers, and so on. And you find it confusing that the EFF, which was the hope of the people to say now there is a party that is going to be addressing our plight, they no longer talk about that. It is because Julius cannot be trusted. He said they are going to work with the DA even in 2019. But last week he said if Zuma can be removed, they are going to work with the ANC. And you ask yourself, what ideological direction have they taken? Because it has now become what Julius wants. You can check everywhere else. There is no program that speaks to what our people are facing. So as they are celebrating the 4 years old, I can say it is best for EFF members to start engaging their leaders to say, this is not what we formed the EFF to be. I feel sorry for those who think that the EFF is going to liberate our people come 2019. They cannot, because all that the leaders of the EFF care about is money, nothing else, and this will continue to add to the pains of our people.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Lufuno Kokoro, former economic freedom fighter member, Botsang Mwila, political analyst, Professor Sipho Siepe, political analyst, and Jackie Shandu is a political commentator. Kim Heller is a political writer for TNA. We take a quick ad break. We'll see you shortly.